Here we have the famous picture of the flag and the Earth and the astronaut, that's Harrison Schmitt on Apollo 17. You try lining up a person, a flag, and the moon in one picture once. No practice, no second shot, get the exposure right, get everything lined up correctly. Yes, you can do it very easily on a double exposure, which is what's happened here. Okay, Apollo 17 on the ground. This is the Taras-Littrow Valley. And it's really just to have a look at, when you manipulate the photograph, what do you get? Something pretty weird going on in the background. I don't know if that's a screen. I don't think it's a giant glass image, which some people claim they have identified on the moon. But let's have a look at something a little bit more realistic. This is a similar photograph. In that photograph is the lunar lander. Can you see it? Thought not. So let's find it. On the right-hand side, it's there. But you can't see it even very clearly here. So let's enlarge the picture a little bit more, and this is what you get. There is the lunar lander. It's tiny in that landscape. And yet, here, what's going on? The middle picture, the big one, is the one we just looked at. But there are two other pictures showing the lunar lander, and this A is this mark on the landscape, as is B, D, and E. So you can identify that they're a picture taken from the same viewpoint. But just to show that the lunar lander bounces around all over the place, well, technically it wasn't moved once it landed. So what's it do? It's on the right-hand side in the top picture, and seriously large in the bottom picture, but it's the same background. B, D, and E are the same. Please explain, representative of NASA. I'd love to know the answer. And where's it gone here? Oh dear, it keeps disappearing. Top photograph shows the LEM, Lunar Excursion Module. I refer to it as the LEM, Lunar Module, with the mountain in the distance with the bottom photograph. Also show the Lunar Excursion Module in the same relative location. Yes, of course it should, because the bottom photograph is taken from a greater distance. Shouldn't the Lunar Excursion Module appear in it? Of course it should. Where's it gone? Come on, NASA, front up to it. Okay, lunar rover. Isn't it wonderful? They took a car with them, which could do about the same distance, 35 kilometers, on battery power in 1969 as a modern electrical car can today. Technology doesn't do that. It moves forward. This is either this is a radio-controlled model, which is more likely, but it hasn't been moved. You've got the footprints there, quite visible, but no tracks. No tracks at all. How did they manage to get could have been placed there, could have been, I don't know. Again, unexplained detail. Ridiculous nonsense. Okay, lifting off, Apollo 17, lifting off. Top left-hand picture, firing of the ascent engine with the two astronauts inside it. Top right, a little further up. Where's the flame? Oh, it's a vacuum, I hear you say. There's no oxygen, so it won't appear. Yes, it does. On the bottom left picture, the shuttle, the space shuttle, when it fires its maneuvering engines, you can see a flame. Without getting into the detail of what the fuel is, the Apollo craft and the shuttle use the same fuel. So when you fire a rocket, you have an exhaust. Where did it go? If you look at the top of the lunar descent, there's nowhere for this really quite powerful rocket, 10,000 pound of thrust rocket, there's nowhere for the exhaust to go, so it's going to fry the astronauts. But they weren't fried. They all landed back on Earth, didn't they? There's Earth. Let's go home, shall we? Now, what's going to happen when they start going back to Earth? They're going to go into re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. They're approaching it at the speed they left at, 25,000 miles an hour. Now, is that fast? Yes, it is. It's very, very fast indeed. What happens when you hit the Earth's atmosphere? You heat up. Pressure. That's standard physics. But you can't, there's no brakes on the command module, which is where the three astronauts are now in. There's no brake on it. You can't slow it down. except by the force of the Earth's atmosphere working on it, which heats it up, which is why you have to have a really important part of your spacecraft, a heat shield, to stop you frying. So they had a heat shield, and they all worked perfectly. The temperature on that heat shield is about 2,700 degrees centigrade, quite hot. We'll come back to that, but let's just look at the objections to this. Why didn't the Russians blow the whistle? Top left, Sergei Korolev, the genius behind the Russian space program. He had died unexpectedly in January '66. The whole space program was riven by competing factions, etc., etc. Nobody could get a grip. On the top right, Yuri Gagarin suffered a serious brain injury when he jumped from a first-floor balcony window when he was disturbed trying to attack a nurse in the hospital. His body has never been found. He was on a training flight. Come on, guys, you know. Yuri Gagarin, world's first cosmonaut, world's first astronaut, and he's in a training flight 5 years after he's supposed to have orbited the Earth. He crashed, killed his instructor, killed himself. They never found the body. Strange, that. The rocks. Oh, yes, rocks. I love rocks. I've got one here. Anybody want to see a piece of MoonRock? Piece of MoonRock. How do you know it's a piece of MoonRock? Because I say so. It's a piece of MoonRock. Can you prove me wrong? Can I prove myself right? No, of course not. You can go to the Science Museum in London and you can see a piece of MoonRock. You know it's a piece of MoonRock because it says MoonRock on it. And the Science Museum wouldn't lie, would they? Of course not. There's 380 kilos of MoonRock held at Johnson Space Center. The Russians managed to return 300 grams of lunar soil. And they asked the Americans, said, would you like to compare our soil with your soil? And the Americans said, well, no, not really. And they didn't. And then they carried on talking and they came to an agreement, yeah, okay, well, we'll exchange some of our MoonRock for some of yours. 18 months later, they were still talking about it. It took until 1971 before America were even prepared to admit or show that they had any. It doesn't make sense. The Russians are normally very upfront. So we got the MoonRock. Of course, that proves they went to the moon. No, it doesn't. Absolute rubbish. Why should it prove anything? Anybody here examined MoonRock? No, thought not. But we're told hundreds of universities have had it and examined it, and they demonstrate it comes from the moon. Of course, they can tell you it came from the moon because they received it from NASA in a box marked MoonRock. That's how they know. Reflectors. They've been firing lasers at the moon to determine how close the moon is or how far away it is. Yes, it was done. I got this. This is a copy of National Geographic, December 1966. I got this yesterday, where the report in it about lasers says lasers were being fired at the moon in 1962 by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to measure the distance from the Earth to the moon. They needed sensitive equipment to pick up the return signal. So why do we keep hearing about Apollo and the idiot lasers and reflection? It's been done years before. The British and the Americans during the war were bouncing radar signals off the moon. So it wasn't any big deal. So none of this supports man landing on the moon. This is the point about it. And then when you get this ridiculous nonsense here, the fake MoonRock, the Dutch love a good joke, I know, but this is presented to the Prime Minister of Holland. It implies that it is a result of landing on the moon. They brought a bit and gave it. 90 countries received pieces of MoonRock. Most of them have lost it. 50 American states were presented with a piece of MoonRock, a bit of dust actually, tiny, not a rock, that's what I call a rock. Something you can see, hold and touch. No, they got little bits of dust. So the Dutch have kept it. It's a piece of petrified wood, obviously we don't know about that. But there's landing sites. They've been photographed. Oh, wow. Oh, I can shut up and go away. Oh, good. I'm glad they landed on the moon. this is so silly. I mean, you need a whacking great arrow to show anything on there. And it doesn't see anything, it's about 1 pixel. And it's supposed to be the Apollo 11, 15, 16, 17, and 14, C-14 in a minute, landers. Really? I don't believe it. This is ridiculous. There's a much more detailed one here of Apollo 12. Remember the Surveyor 3 craft which had landed on the Surveyor crater, they call it, obviously a sensible name. And they photographed it, and there's the Intrepid, the descent stage on the top in the middle. Yeah, and you can even see the tracks that the astronauts left. Oh, come on. You know, I've heard of Photoshop. Why are the tracks almost as big as the lander? The lander is 20 foot across. You wouldn't expect that, no. This is the sort of photograph you could expect. This was taken 3 years before Apollo by the lunar orbiter missions, which were unmanned, orbiting the moon, allegedly photographing positions for landing sites on the moon. This is Copernicus crater. It's the one in the middle when you look at the moon, full moon. It's slightly to the left of center, 60 miles across, so you're looking here at what I consider to be an open-cast coal mine, not an impact crater. There are plenty of impact craters on the moon, but this isn't one of them. We're not getting into the detail of that, but one of the other photographs taken on this was something I've never, ever seen reported since. The rolling rocks. You Google rolling rocks on the moon, you'll get these pictures come up if you want to see them yourself. I don't know what they are. They're quite big, whatever they are, and they leave a distinct track.